excited about this morning. Thank you for our presenters coming to talk career management. I know within public affairs, we kind of in the past have been somewhat in the shelf or on the background or however you want to describe it, and we haven't been recognized as a branch in managing our own officers and enlisted over the years. And that's changed recently. In the last 6 months, working with the folks that are speaking today, we now have a brigade working group. We now have the ability to influence who is coming into our branch, where they're being assigned across the Texas National Guard. And so it's a big part of the people that are getting ready to present. So hit them up with questions if you want to know how to be promoted. How do you get transferred from assignment to assignment? How do we do that whole process? Hit them up. And that's going to be the same for the air, although a little more simple than the way we do in the Army, and then the non-commissioned officers as well. So without further ado, bring up Major Perez first. Major Perez, good friend of mine. I appreciate him and all he's doing. He's over at G1.
Slide with air first.
We inverse? Okay.
No, I got it. Switch them.
I think it, yeah. And I thought we were going arm air. Hey, either way, we'll be flexible. Who wants to go first? Arm wrestle over it?
Okay.
All right.
I'm sitting down.
All right. Fortunately, we have more Army folks in the room right now, so we'll just start with Major Perez. Come on up.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to say that when I was asked to come up here, I was a little scared because standing in front of public affairs, you do this for a living. You speak to people and you know how to articulate very well. So bear with me. My platform technique is not where it should be, but I want to make sure you get the message. And Perez, by the way, it's P-E-R-E-Z to start off with that. So that was our morning joke for this morning. So hopefully you got a laugh out of it. So we'll go ahead.
Minus 2 points.
Minus 2 points. They're going our flag. Those are mine. A little bit about where I work, just to give you a little bit of context. So I work in the Texas Army National Guard G1, Officer Personnel Management Branch. So we're a branch within the G1, specifically dealing with the officers, Army officers. And so what I'm going to go over today is a little bit of overview on how we manage our talent at the officer, for the officer corps, and how that impacts you as public affairs, and how you fit into that pie. And so, no further ado, we'll go ahead and slides. Here's the agenda, and I think I have 23 minutes. Is that right?
We can flex a little bit if we
All
need
right,
to.
so I'll try to keep it to 10 if I can. Next slide. All right, so a little forward here. Some reading for you. You can see it on the screen. So the skills, knowledge, and behaviors that are mentioned here is something I'm going to talk about as we go through the course of this briefing. It's a mind shift on how the military, not just Texas, but big Army, is going about managing their talent. So I'll give you a second to read that. Next slide. So back in 2015, 2016, the Department of the Army decided to shift how they manage their officer talent. It used to be, hey, let's fill a position. They just grab people, let's put them where we need to. It was what they call a distribution cycle. Twice a year, they would just move people around. Military, the Army decided, sometimes we got to make sure we put the right skill set in the right position. So they decided to come up with a strategy, which is what these documents are showing here. And the strategy was to look more at the knowledge, the skills, and the behaviors of the individuals to try to fit them to the right position. Interesting enough, the Guard, for the most part, has been doing something similar all these years. Big Army's trying to catch up. And I say that because we have the constraints of geographical locations for our units. So we can't always fit the right person in the right unit because it might be 700 miles away in the case of Texas. It might be pretty far. So sometimes we have to work around those constraints. And so Big Army is starting to do something like this. They're trying to take into account those knowledge and the skills and the behaviors of the individual before they put them in positions. And so, next slide. So within the strategy, there's some key principles to effective talent management. What Texas decided to do is, let's go ahead and use this as our base document so that we can start developing our own strategy and how we want to do business so that it's transparent to the officer corps. People know how to get promoted. People know how to move up in for progression within their branches. And so key takeaways here, and I won't go through all of them obviously, but probably the first up there, talent management is an investment. As you already know, you've probably heard statistics before. We spend a lot of money not just in training of individuals, but just follow-on training, whether it's professional development, what have you. A lot of money gets spent in each one of us as we go through our military career. But again, the rest of these principles, probably number 16, having the right person, the right job, and the right team, goes back to the knowledge, behaviors, and skills that we are trying to mirror up with the position and the requirements of the organization. Next slide. So Texas has started this process. It actually began back in 2017, but even prior to this, Texas had a way to manage the officer talent, but it was not as formalized as we're getting to at this point. We started in 2017 with the director from the CG at the time, General Norris. He wanted to ensure that we were not forgetting about our officer, every officer out there, we were not forgetting about them. What was happening is, and this really stemmed from a personal experience of hers, she was trying to fill a position as an engineer brigade commander. I believe it was a logistics position, and she was unable to get the other unit or get an officer into her ability to fill a critical need. And she's like, this cannot be this difficult. We should be able to, if I need a logistics officer, we should be able to look across the spectrum and find a logistics officer that we can fill my billet. And so she realized that there's a lot of stovepiping going on. Brigades take care of their own, battalions take care of their own. And so what she started doing, you know what, G1, I'm part of the G1. Let's go ahead and she set out a directive. Let's go and we can transcend and make sure we're not stovepiping. We're looking across the entire Texas and being able to facilitate these moves, come up with some ideas. So the framework was established in September of 17. We put out some frag orders to kind of get some feels on how this might work. Believe me, we had a lot of working groups that went through this process. It was a bit painful to get it going because, again, mindsets, people have been around, they know how it's been done. So it took a little bit of time to get this. But in December of 2017, we established probably our first big initiative, and that was the branch advisory working groups. And I'll talk more about them a little bit later, but these branch advisory working groups are basically branch-specific groups headed by an 06 that is aligned to, in most cases, a brigade command. Now, I'll let you know a little bit later on how public affairs fits into this, because you're not a branch, you're a functionary, and so you guys are very unique, so I'll explain that a little bit later. Then we established in September of 2018 the Talent Management Advisory Committee, which we call the TMAC, and I'll explain that later as well, and how that fits into this process. But we were proud to say that we are shooting for the end of this year to actually have a Texas Army National Guard talent management regulation. One of the things that we're somewhat struggling with is getting the word out. We are using the Advisory Working Group, which we call the FOG, and the TMAC to kind of get the message out to our officers. Counseling, how does this work? But we're still finding the message hasn't got out just yet, which is kind of ironic that I'm here talking to the public affairs today. But I had talked to Colonel Spanton about this, and it's probably something that we would be soliciting as help as we move closer to getting that regulation out to ensure people understand what we're doing, what's being done. Next slide. So this, we call this the circle of death. Basically what we did is we had to align all our different boards, both the full-time boards, like AGRs, for example, along with the boards that are done by the talent management committees, to ensure that we were covering all the gaps. And we went as far as including even our enlisted boards into it. Although our enlisted side hasn't fully come online with this just yet, we're using the officer corps as a guinea pig. So that, believe it or not, we were not synchronized. And so this allows us to synchronize. Again, this is more internal for us, but I wanted to let you know that it's something that we thought about. And again, we call it the circle of death for a reason, right? So next slide.
That's impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody came up with that, right? For some of you officers who've been with the National Guard, Texas National Guard for a while, you may remember the COB. Does anybody remember the COB? Anyone? Consolidated Officer Board? I know you do, some of you, okay. And so the COB was one of those legacy boards that we had to change up because there were some gaps. The COB was looking, they were grade centric. The criteria that were set were very specific, and they dictated you get 1 point for master's degree, for example, those kind of things. And we realized that we were not putting a lot of emphasis on what Department of the Army boards really look at, which is your evaluations and how well did you perform in those particular jobs. And so the COB had a bit of a gap in that sense. So the new board, which we've had this for 2 years now, is the CMB, which you're familiar with now. And that particular board allows us to look specifically at how the individual performs in their particular position, how well they perform in that job. It does provide also a number or a scoring system, which I won't go into today, but I would definitely share that with Colonel Spanton or anywhere that we have a place to do so, to share that. But the other boards, I won't go too much into those details now, but I'll talk about it a little later. But again, we made some changes to ensure that we cover all those gaps. Next slide. So some definitions, I talked about the Talent Management Advisory Committee, or TMAC. And this doesn't really mean much to you right now, but until I get to the next slide, really. But Tier 3 assignments are really your 04 billets, 04 major assignments. The TMAC handles those. The branch advisory working groups, this is really where the rubber meets the road, because each of the individuals that are asked to understand the branch as it relates to career progression, Big Army, Department of the Army career progression, understand the density within their branch, understand the nuances that we may not know at my level, going through a transition change in their life, or a career change, personal life, or civilian career that may impact their next assignment. I would not, at the OPM level, would not know that. So these branch advisory working groups are charged with knowing that much more detail about those officers. Next slide. Okay, so this little matrix is probably a good matrix that you might want to put in your toolkit for the officer corps. And so we broke up pretty much all of our grades by a tier. Working your left to right there, the Tier 1 assignments are all your 06 assignments, which include all joint assignments. And so for public affairs, that's important because you do have positions within the joint that you can fill the for. Those particular assignments, Tier 1 assignments, they are recommended by. Yes, that's correct. No, that's okay. Those Tier 1 assignments are recommended by the TMAC, which I'll talk about again later on, at the SLD board, the Senior Leadership Development Board. And so, if you work your way all the way to the right, you'll notice that each of these recommenders provide input to a particular board that's conducted during certain times of the year. Okay, so next slide. All right, so the branch advisory working group, this is their responsibilities. Like I mentioned before, they have to have an intimate knowledge of the branch, understand what career path needs to happen. You, as public affairs, have a branch advisory working group, which is headed by Lieutenant Colonel Spanton. He is your public affairs chair, and I'll get into that a little bit later as well, but these are some of the responsibilities that he has. Like, we're a very small group, so it's not very difficult. So right now the challenge for you is recruiting people into the public affairs world. Next slide. Here's an example. Go to the next slide. Okay, so here's another example of a composition. It's very much position driven. So as people move in and out of these positions, the individual that assumes the role becomes a member of the BOG. So example, the state PAO, the chair of the state PAO, so Lieutenant Colonel Spanton departs, someone else comes in, that individual assumes the role of the chair. In the case of the logistics BOG, it's the commander of the sustainment brigade, for example. That's the brigade commander. When that individual departs, the new brigade commander takes over that role. And so that way it's position-based as opposed to individual-based. And these are all appointed positions by the CG. So we look at this. If there's any major changes that need to happen, for example, let's say the state PAO were to become an Air Force, for example. This is an Army program, so we would have to look at that and see who would become the next chair for the PAO functional area. Next slide. Okay, so the TMAC, these individuals are responsible for approving all 04 assignments. We actually just had a TMAC yesterday. So those results, all these 04 assignments will be out and published here in another week or so for officers that were selected for 04 assignments. They also, the TMAC provides 05 recommendations. So for command, for example, or even 05 public affairs positions, they would be recommended by the TMAC and approved by the Senior Leadership Development Board. Next slide. So the TMAC is comprised of brigade commanders, chiefs of staff, and it's chaired by a general officer. The chiefs of staff, that includes the joint chiefs of staff. And so for joint positions, again, for those particular billets, you will have there's a voice in this process for those individuals. Next slide. Next slide.
It's not advancing.
Oh, sorry. What? Let me look at my notes and I'll keep talking.
While you're working out, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, what happens to, I'm aviation branch, I'm in public affairs, being controlled, I'm actually on the blog. What if I wanted to be considered to go back into the aviation world, or are they already looking at me, hey, he's an aviation guy, he's just in public affairs?
So that is a very good question, sir, and actually that was brought up during the TMAC yesterday. So moving forward, what we're looking at is having the officer make a selection or declare. I'm a public affairs, I'm an aviator, I want to be managed by the aviators now. And we're thinking that the CMB timeframe is probably the right time, since we do that every year, for someone to do that. However, we have to work out the mechanism on that. So right now, the way it's working is public affairs is tracking all 46 outfits, public affairs officers. Aviation is looking at you as well, but realizing that you're a public affairs person. And so you're being looked at on both sides, except aviation pretty much at this point gives onus to Colonel Spanting and his group, just because they know that you've been doing that job for a while. Okay, so this is a process that goes on every quarter. Every quarter there is some kind of board going on, whether it's the branch advisor working groups working to fill nominations for the TMAC or for the Senior Leadership Development Board. Like I mentioned, we just had a board yesterday. The next one's in September for the SLDB for 05 positions. Then we roll back into the TMAC in December for 04 billets. So continuous process. So what does that mean to you? As a public affairs, your initial point of contact is going to be Lieutenant Colonel Spanting or the BOG chair for public affairs. If you have career moves you want to make, or you're thinking about moving on to something else, that is the person you want to talk to. And that's something that was the intent behind establishing the BOGs, that anyone can talk to the individuals that are members of the BOG. Yes, you might be part of a battalion, however, the intent was that you have individuals that you can call up and talk to be able to get some advice on where your next move may be, or if you just want to let them know, hey, I'm thinking of branch transfer, I want to be a different branch. Or I want to go back from my functional area, get back into the aviation world, for example. That's your entry point. Next slide. All right, so this links on the far left-hand side, and it's a top-down or bottom-up process. Either a unit says, I have a position I need to fill. In the case of public affairs, there's a lot of fills out there. So the unit may request public affairs, they just might not be anyone to fill them at the time, unfortunately. The other way is what we call active management. In other words, or succession planning. That means that the branch advisory working group is looking across the state and deciding, I see this individual has been there a very long time. For career progression, we need to move them. And in that case, that's really where we want to get to. Where the branch advisory working groups are looking ahead. Okay, this individual will be moving in 2 years or a year from now. Who's going to succession plan that? Who's going to follow on that position when that individual moves? We're not there just yet. This is fairly early on, but we will get there. And that's true talent management, establishing the succession planning for different positions across the organization. Next slide. All right, public affairs branch. You guys are very small. Only 16 authorized positions. However, the knowledge, skills, and behaviors required to do what you do, it's pretty intensive. When I was looking into you guys a little bit, DAPAB 600-3 is really where you go to get a lot of information. But on the behaviors piece, again, there's a lot that you have to be able to show to be a member of the public affairs branch. So I can see that making it difficult to recruit, but there's people out there that they can definitely be alongside you in doing public affairs work. And so while this is not a recruiting pitch, I will say that if you know individuals out there, please bring them on board. Mr. Colonel Spanton's already been saying that to you guys. But so these are just some of the knowledge and skills and behaviors that the Army thinks are required of a public affairs world to be a successful public affairs officer. Next slide. For the captain is your entry level, so really there's no requirements for captain, although here's some positions that you can fill as a captain. The real requirements really begin at the major level. At the major level is when you you have to hit your key developmental assignments. And we'll get to the next slide on that. There, just majors. So as a major, you're still expected to have your cap skirt complete, your ILE Common Core complete, and then you need to make sure you hit those key developmental assignments, which again, between yourself, managing your career, along with your branch advisor working group chair and members, you should be able to hit those keys. If you know you're lacking a particular position, you talk to your chair and the members of your BOG and realize, okay, I need to go ahead and move into one of these billets to make sure I am competitive when I go in front of a department of the Army Board. So, next slide. Lieutenant Colonel, at that point, you really, Texas-wide, is really division PAO for us, and of course, state level or joint. But the key takeaway here is that just because you're in the public affairs branch or functional area, you still have to do all the other things the Army requires of you. So as a captain, your captain's career corps, and so on and so forth. And oh, by the way, keep up with all your civilian credentialing or education that you have to do as well. Next slide. It's my point of contact. I try to skim through it quickly. Hopefully I can answer any questions you have. I have about 2 minutes.
A couple questions, sure.
Yes, sir.
Sir, Bass from Round Texas State Yard. The list of 23 behaviors, who would you not want to have all 23 of those behaviors from adaptable down to thoughtful?
Well, good point. Because you're not going to have all of them in some cases, I don't think. Who would?
I mean, what, are you looking for a tank commander who doesn't have like number 16? Or?
Sure. No, it's just, those are the behaviors that the Department of the Army thinks to be successful as a public affairs, you should have, or you should carry. But I see your point. Those can translate into pretty much any branch, is what you're trying to get to, right?
Everybody should always
Yeah,
have.
sure. Good point.
No questions.
Awesome.
I've only got 2 of those, so.
All right, up next, Captain Petrella for the Air Force. Let's give a round of applause before she starts.
Mine isn't quite as complex. So I think I have 1 air here. Everyone else is Army, correct? No. Air, okay. Yes, 2. All right.
He dressed like an Army guy.
He walked in late.
Give us 1 second to get your slides.
I really don't like slides. I just put something together just to have something. Yeah.
If you're going to be a major, you're going to have to work PowerPoint.
I know how to work PowerPoint. I wasn't exec, so I got that covered. All right, so just real quick, Captain Cindy Petrella out of the 149th Fire Wing down in San Antonio. I've been a PAO since 2012. Left a little bit to go to DC to be a GO exec, and then came back to Texas. So my husband was active duty at the time, so we moved, came back, he retired, and now we're here forever. So Texas is home. I'm just going to briefly go over kind of what our wing construct looks like as PA, and then kind of go into the changes of our career field that's coming up and happening right now, which you guys would know, and then kind of go into a little bit more something everyone can learn something from, because I didn't want to keep it air-centric. So go ahead. So this is kind of what an air wing looks like. We have 6 positions, so the Houston unit, the Fort Worth unit, and our San Antonio unit this is what we have. You have your major PAO. I put on major in August, so that's the furthest I can go. We don't have any lieutenant colonel positions at the wing level, so I know Colonel Saldivar, he is our director of Air National Guard. He's trying to get to where wings have a lieutenant colonel, but that's kind of in the works right now. So once I hit major, I can stay there, but if I want to go any further, obviously I have to retrain or move or try to get to NGB, look for other assignments other places if I want to stay as a PA. I've been a PA my whole career, so I have to do something else. It's not like Army where you have a career field and then you go into PA and you have the option to go back. I'd actually have to completely leave PA and retrain into something new. So, for that, yes, ma'am.
The operations chief, the senior master sergeant at the 136 is actually Title V.
Title V? Okay. Yeah, we'll get it. Our master sergeant is our Title V at San Antonio. So that the Title V's can change. I know some wings actually have an AGR. The DC unit I was at, their senior master sergeant is actually an AGR. So it just, every wing it's command supported, so whatever the commander says, oh, I'm gonna make them Title V or I'm gonna make them AGR, that's kind of command's decision how they wanna do that, but every wing only has one full-time. We currently have one that is on a temp in-depth, so at least we have 2 people kind of filling that. To kind of stay on the career, for major, obviously, right now they just changed it. If you wanna become a PAO or go into that, you have to have a specific degree either in journalism, public affairs, political science. So that requirement just came about a year ago to where it's degree specific. I just kind of left out that I have a master's in PA. I mean, it just, so it kind of helped out. We also just got a new PA who is legislative affairs, Captain Thompson. So his degree obviously isn't PA, but he has experience. So it was an easy waiver to get him in as a PA. He just started last weekend. So if anyone knows him up here in legislative affairs. So next we have our senior. That's the highest rank right now at ANGY for enlisted. I know our FAM, our functional area manager, Senior Master Sergeant Luby, who is now transitioning to ANG Creative. He's been trying to get that to be an E9, but it got declined. So the highest you can go there is Senior Master Sergeant, unless you're lucky enough to where your command says, oh, I want a chief. You know, it's all, everything's command driven, so when it comes to that. So right now it's Senior Master Sergeant. And can you go back to the next slide for me? The first one? Yeah. So we have, right now we have a broadcast journalist. We have 2 broadcasters and 2 photojournalists. We have the master is our broadcaster and a staff sergeant, and then we have tech as a PJ and a staff as a PJ. We have currently 2 in access to this, so I was able to plus up on a couple of the positions because we're about to have some major changes. Our senior's retiring. Anybody Air Force is looking for a senior job? He's going to be retiring soon, so we'll have some movement hopefully and be able to bring on board some more people. So that's what it looks like for Air Force right now. Very simple, right? Go to the next slide. So the big changes that's coming down for Air Force is we are transitioning to an X6, which is a public affairs specialist. So no one will be categorized anymore as a broadcaster or a photojournalist. Yes, they'll still have that specialty, but now the PJs have to learn broadcasting and the broadcasters have to learn photojournalism. So it's going to become a PA specialist, which the capstone for that is in November. So all of our airmen are right now trying to do like OJT and CDCs and trying to learn those career fields. So that's the big change right now that's happening with us, which is great because now I'm not stuck to making that master a broadcaster. Now that master can be anybody in that shop. The same with the tech sergeant. I don't have to like, oh, now you have to learn X5 or X2. Then now everyone will be X6, which is really nice for them. I think so. It's just a lot of heartache trying to get everyone trained. It's just for weekenders. And it's hard learning a whole new career just on the weekend. And active Air Force expects us to be ready. So they're coming to do their capstone in November, and we just have to figure it out, because they don't ever consider us right, the active duty side, at least for the air, they're just like, get it done. So the new 23-week course for this PA specialist starts in October, so that's a 23-week course now. So they're going to be gone almost 6 months just to learn the whole career field at InPost. Any questions so far? Then I'll talk on PME. I guess I should touch on that too. I did a little bit on major as far as degree requirements. Senior Master Sergeant, obviously, they have to have their senior NCO. They have to have their skill level and all those requirements done. They also have to have their CCAF, their Community College Air Force degree, to become a Senior Master Sergeant. For Master Sergeant, it's NCO Academy. They have to be at their 7 level, which is more CDC's, career development, in order to promote up to master. And then tech, we just ALS and some other PME they have to do. CDCs are important career development course. So as soon as we bring somebody in that's finished tech school, here you go, here's more school, get that done. I'm a big pusher on getting your PME done, your education, that way they are ready for promotion. The last thing you want to do is get to that, okay, we had that slide for Master Sergeant, but sorry, you don't have your PME done. I mean, we don't want that to happen to anybody. Any questions? I'm going through it quick, I know. It's Army, so you go ahead to the next one. So as far as trying to find those promotion opportunities, this is my slide. I'm very simple. Look for opportunities. I know our functional area manager is really good at pushing out assignments if you're willing to move. If you're not willing to move and you are set on staying in San Antonio or Houston, or it's just pretty much a waiting game, or if you're willing to retrain into something else. You know, our PA shops are small, and so, but if you're willing to be just a DSG and drive to San Antonio or drive to Dallas on the weekends for a promotion, then it could be worth it. So, but get the education and training done. If you look for opportunities, that's the biggest thing I tell my people. Just, you gotta look on the A&G webpage. They have opportunities in DC. DC is probably the most abundance of jobs in PA for us. And then you have McGee Tyson, which is another area we can go to at the tech. I'm trying to think of, what is it called? The Public Affairs Management course. So they have the people go there for it to be an instructor, and they have some opportunities to promote there as well. So you can go to the next one. So this is kind of, I wanted to get to for everybody. There aren't always the promotion opportunities in PA, but there's always ways to build your resume. So people look at you for those promotion opportunities. It's not just what you do at work and your PME and all that. It's what else you're learning on the outside. Who here is just weekend? So if you want to do a public affairs like civilian career, these are also good on the civilian side. So continuing education, bachelor's and master's degree. I think just about everybody in my shop has at least a bachelor's or a master's degree in either English or journalism or something to that matter. 5 minutes. Real quick, DINFOS. Okay, DINFOS has a lot of extra classes. I brought brochures of DINFOS. Some of them have prerequisites, but not all of them. So if you have photojournalism, there's advanced photojournalism, there's other courses you can take. You just go onto their website, you click course selection, you can look up other courses. NPPA has a ton of courses as well. I think they have one here in Austin. It's like a photo, you get a square of Austin and you have to meet these criteria of what pictures to take throughout in that square of Austin. And it's a really neat little certification, but they're nationwide. Another one is the PRSA. They have a million courses. Like they have communicating to manage performance, crafting the perfect pitch, and some of these are webinars, so you can just log in from wherever you are and just kind of learn, add to your resume of courses. And they also have the accredited public relations and military communications. We all get $4,000 towards certification for tuition assistance. That course is covered by tuition assistance. So, and if you are curious about it, here it is. It's great to add, and it has the military added to it. Has anyone heard of that course?
I have.
Do you have it?
Well, somebody who was in my office is taking it right now.
How they like it?
Fair.
Fair?
It is tough.
Yeah.
It is, but what they don't know is you can actually get the books ahead of time, study before you even enroll in the course. So when you enroll in the course, you can just roll right through it. And that's the best way to do it.
And DMA is the liaison for that. So, they worked with Defense Media Activity to create this course for military specific. So you don't get DINFOS, it's not part of DINFOS, but it is accredited. And then you have FEMA courses. I actually actually interned with FEMA in their PIO area where I did a lot of journalism for them during, did a lot of Petrella stuff with them. So I had the opportunity to intern with FEMA. They have tons of they have a PIO course you can take, and then last is ADLS. ADLS has like 12 public affairs specific classes. So if you go in there and you're like, I don't know, PA, go to ADLS because you can learn everything. Recession, just basic journalism, all that stuff is in ADLS. Does everyone have access to ADLS? Is that like a DoD portal thing?
On the portal?
Yeah. So, any questions? Air Force is kind of. I'm all about education, so I'm always pushing my people to like learn new things and do things. That's what I do myself. So. No? He only gave me 5 minutes, so there.
Is your ADLS open to public?
You know, I know you can create a login, so I think so. You can create like just a login and a password to log in from anywhere. So you should be able
State
to.
Card doesn't have access to some of your portals. That's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Okay.
You can Google it. I can Google it on my phone and check.
I can do that.
Okay.
I don't need to, but I will.
I'm a Googler too.
Okay.
Yes?
2 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No more questions?
Let's give it a piece of.
Hopefully I kind of helped air a little bit. That is How long have you been in PA? 2 years? 2 years? Where'd you come from?
Active duty.
Active duty? Okay. It's fine. I don't know. I love PA. I wish I could stay in it forever. I hope they make it a lieutenant colonel. If they don't, then I guess they're going to boot me out eventually. Because I put on major in August, so it's. All right. Well, thanks for your time. And if you're No, it's okay.
All right, we've got to do a little bit of a computer transition while we move to the NCO4. But a little bit about my background. I talked to you yesterday. I was a human resources assignments officer, right? So worked at HRC. And what we didn't get to, because of time, is some of that career management piece of how your OERs are written, how your NCOERs are written, to make sure that you become eligible to even get into our branch on the Army side. I know typically when we were given branch briefs, they were about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes each. And so we really kind of compressed it today down to about 20 to 25 minutes. So are there any questions from that viewpoint while we move into the NCO brief? Any questions before the general career management questions? Sounds like everybody's ready to get promoted. All right, give us a minute or two, grab some coffee if you need, and we'll go from there. Quick change, we're about ready to kick off, so grab what you need, get back.
Yeah, it's working. It's good.
I don't know. That's a good question.
It's okay. Yeah, it might take a few Well, no, that was very last part.
Okay, I saw
Distributed planning
I lost it now.
Yeah, exactly.
It just looks like that.
And you also want to do the GPS basic stuff. You guys are open to doing basic. You guys are always welcome to do the basic. There's a GPS machine basic. Send me a link. They do it all over Texas. There's not one in Austin right now. There's like one. Oh, send me a link. Since we have people everywhere, we might. Yeah. But the other thing I've never done. Selling marketing cost any food that we know, we live free. And it's, you know, teaching us how to like use our person, you know, it's basically teaching you how to like go on. So that you be with like a lot of other first responders, DPS, and a lot of firefighters.
All right, 2 minutes. Grab your seats.
Yes, because all our people. Yeah, 3 days to free. Right. Wow, okay. Yeah.
Carnegie. Carnegie.
Something we should get to.
All right, get ready to start. 1 minute. Your red and green, red and green light. Old school there. I don't even jump on planes because they by themselves
I
and
just
so loud.
looked it up, they've got
10,
shops
6,
out in Paso, Victoria.
No, I'll fight you to the door if it's going down involuntarily.
We could do Dallas, we've got 2 of us.
Alright, so I think I only have a couple of enlisted folks here, but I do have a few officers. So I'm Master Sergeant Miller, I'm with the National Guard Bureau of Public Affairs. I'm the NCOIC for Readiness and Training, as well as plans and policies. But if there's something that's wrong, don't blame me. I have several people that you can blame other than me, and we'll see it at the end of the presentation. So right now, like the Air Force, the Army is going through a convergence of MOSs. So the Air Force kind of already did this a few years ago. They went into their public affairs, and then now they're doing the broadcast and print side. So we're doing the broadcast and print, and then we've been notified that we're going to take on RBI folks, so we're doing it kind of backwards. So within the next few years, you're going to see the 25s probably roll into 46s, or vice versa, or we'll hold up some total new MOS, more to follow. Next slide. So as of October 1st of 2018, you are no longer a 46 Quebec or Romeo if you are a staff sergeant and below. You're a 46 Sierra. So as I was talking to the good major who handles your G1 operations, if you still read as a staff sergeant Quebec or Romeo, then it has to be hard-coded into SIDPERS to change that to Sierra. And then you're supposed to add an ASI that shows that you need continued training, whether it's print or broadcast, so the 2 and the 3. And you have until basically the hard date is September 30th, 2021, or you become non-MOS qualified. So why is that important? What happens when you lose your MOS? What happens if you have TA and you lose your MOS? What happens if you have GI Bill and you're using it and you have your MOS, you lose your MOS? Bonuses are a big deal. So I put a hard date of 30 June because it's going to take me 90 days to get that packet and then process it and send it back to you guys so that your G1s can go in and hard key that and get your MOS qualified and save you some money. Right now, if you complete BCS, which that's a debatable thing depending on who you talk to at APAC, BCS was recently decertified as an MOS producing school, so that's the broadcast communications course basically. The only route basically is BPAS-C in combination with EJC, but the EJC positions are going to all the pipeline recruits. So if you have an EJC slot and you're already a 46 series, you're going to lose that slot. It's going to go to a pipeline soldier because they're backing up at DIMPOS. Student company is kind of getting panicked. Next slide, please. So basically the process, and I know it's supposed to be kind of like career management, but this is really the hot button issue we have right now, but it does affect the entire field. The process is to submit or complete your validation training, or go back to DIMPOS and complete the training that's outlined there, either way. And then once you're complete with that training, you, in your command, complete a 4187, send me copies of that with copies of your completion certificate or your 1059s. If you have folks that went through both the broadcast course and the print course, send me copies of their certificate or send me copies of 1059s for both, along with the 47 or 4187 complete and signed. And then I forward that to APAC, where the APAC director, Colonel Bloom, who's a former Oklahoma National Guard PA,
He is the only authorized signature authority to do this. So along with ETPs, and we'll cover that in another slide deck, he is the only person that can approve that. So we've had actually reports that some states have actually done that on their own and went into SITPERS and hard keyed it and took care of it. So the problem with that is we're going to have some number conflicts down the road, and Big Army is going to step in and say, what's the deal? So I ask that we follow the process and realize that APAC is the only authorized approval authority for the validations and ETPs. And then I said we'll cover ETPs kind of off the side after that. Next slide. Okay, so like I was saying, you have a couple options. You can do home station validation training. So if you have a 46 Zulu school trained, not a staff sergeant who's sitting in a 46 Zulu slot, a 46 Zulu, they can validate your folks. And most of the folks have out there the requirements. So right now, if you're going from Quebec to Romeo, you pretty much all you have to do is a non-narrative multimedia piece. I think most of the folks have seen this. I know I've sent it to Master Sergeant Leslie. I've sent it to Major Negrelli, Sergeant First Class Bellman. So I think for the most part, everybody's got a copy of what the requirements are. They're not that hard. And then if you're Romeo going to Quebec, you have to produce a picture story. That's it. Now, and apparently we have no requirements anymore. Thank you. Well, you're now all validated. See you later.
Hey, everyone, safety brief.
There we go. Oh, we got it.
That's okay. I can cover. You stay where we are. I'll cover the rest. So basically, home station validation is just training you guys do at home. At NGB, it's funny because a lot of people look to NGB for guidance and sometimes approval, but really in most cases we don't have the authority to give you approval. So I find that people contact me when they need top cover or they need someone to tell them, hey, NGB said it's okay to do it. And on the side I'm going, well, I really can't tell you that it's okay, but
Actually, we use your name, Master Sergeant Wheeler. So.
he does, and that's fine. I'm okay with that because I'm close to retirement. And so like I was saying, in 46 Zulu, train your folks at home, complete the 4187, send me task sheet validation or completed task sheets, which just outlines that yes, you know what goes to the process, what goes into creating the project, you're thinking about it, whatever, it meets your commander's strategic communications goals and whatnot. And then once I get that, give me a couple of months, because right now Colonel Bloom's on medical leave and it's taking a while to get stuff signed. But it can take anywhere between 48 hours and 2 months. So just give me, don't start hounding me, asking me, 3 weeks later, hey, I haven't seen my paperwork yet. What's the deal? We're working. Trust me, I'm at APAC twice a week and I'm bugging them all the time. I have a desk set up now. And then if you can get them to school, I highly suggest it. Obviously, we always would like to see institutional training. If your state can afford to pay it, if you can find the slots, that's the hard part, is finding the seats. Like I said, EJC, I get phone calls regularly from the registrar's office, Trevon Morris, you might recognize the name, and she's like, well, Sergeant Wheeler, we're still getting folks that are showing up for BCS, and I have to send them home. So don't send your soldiers to BCS, please. Broadcast course is no longer MOS producing, and they're just going to send you home. DIMPOS has its own issues with ATARs, so a lot of times they can't catch the folks that are showing up. So we're trying to get the word out, don't send your folks to BCS. BPAS-C is still open until first quarter of next year, from what I'm told. So if you can find a seat, that's great. So this is mainly for your reclass folks that you want to bring in. If you can find a seat for BPAS-C, get them in there. Don't worry about EJC. When you bring them home, you can do your home station validation. You guys have a large number of public affairs assets and expertise. You should be able to easily handle those training and reclasses or validations at home. But don't worry about spending the money on that course. But you're going to have, again, a hard time finding those seats because we're in the last. This is kind of bridge into my next portion. We're in the death throes of BPAS-C. Okay, so if anybody doesn't know, and this affects the Air Guard as well, a couple of you, as you all know, it takes a couple of years to kind of work concepts and projects through the system. So a couple of years ago, it was decided that all 5 services were going to merge into one school. So that's where the Military Communications Foundations course came from, MCF. So it's modeled kind of after the Navy's mass communications course that they did around 12 years ago. So the Navy's kind of taking a lead role in teaching the pilot, which just graduated, with a few smattering of Air Force and Army instructors in there. It's 108 training days. So it goes from 13 weeks, which is the typical BPAS-C, or excuse me, 11 weeks BPAS-C, and 13 weeks for the broadcast course, to 22, because you're doing both. They're merging the MOSs. All the services have now merged. They're public affairs, print, and broadcast. So they need to teach you more. Plus, it involves a lot more of upper-level public affairs, which NCOs and enlisted, they finally realized that we do a lot more than just write stories and take pictures. That we do deal with media a lot more than we used to. So they're adding a lot of that in there as well. It's going to hurt us, obviously, as a reserve component. We're in the same boat as the Army Reserves. 22 weeks is a long time, especially if you have reclasses. Pipelines, doesn't really matter. They're going through basic. They're a captive audience. But if you have somebody who's dealing with NTC rotations and other, or AT and other training and hurricanes and whatnot, and you want them to go to a 22-week school course, it's going to be painful for the next couple of years until we kind of work through it. We've been requesting they have a morphed kind of online version where you conduct online training for so long and then maybe spend a month or whatever at DIMPOS. But that's going to take a couple of years really to kind of work through. I'd like to say we were involved in the discussions when they came together on this, but I wasn't at APAC at that point. Colonel Stillinger can be my alibi. I was at Midwest when they were talking about it, and then anybody who was at the PATW a couple of years ago, we went to DIMPOS, and they were telling everybody about this great course, and then everybody's like, whoa, 108 training days? Well, actually, they say 100, it's misleading. They're good car sales. We use car salesmen. They said it's 108 days. They left out the part where, it doesn't include weekends. So it's 6 months. So yeah, we explained to them that wasn't a good thing. Okay, so moving on to exception to policies. I'm the lucky person that gets to handle all exceptions to policy packets that go through for Army Guard, both both officer and enlisted. So if you have to go to a DIMPOS course and you don't meet the prerequisites, your packet goes through me. If you have a new public affairs officer who doesn't meet the prerequisites, the packet goes through me. So these are the general guidance. Okay, so it kind of goes for both the reclass or officer or whatnot, or for any of the DIMPOS courses. Now be aware, DIMPOS, there's a memo dated from last year that DIMPOS has the authority to approve or deny all ETPs for all DIMPOS courses. Now there's a conflict because when I call them on it, they say, well, no, the services are required to do that. And then I point to their memo and say, well, that's not what you guys are saying, so which is it? So for the most part, if it's a MOS producing issue or skill level 1 MCF, BPAS-C, or PAQC, the services are handling it. If it's those intermediate courses, then they reserve the right to approve or deny. It's pretty much being left at this point in the hands of the services. So basically what I need to see, because I know everybody remembers we used to be a packet MOS, where we used to have to go provide a packet. We're not a packet MOS anymore. However, I get a lot of questions from APAC when they, when I send them a packet, they're like, well, what's their PT look like? Or what's their this look like? Or what's that? Or hey, this is kind of weird. This person was a sergeant first class in their NCOER, but now they're a staff sergeant. Why? So I have to provide them certain information and certain answers. So for that reason, I need to see certain things. So I need to see basically your last 2 NCOERs or OERs, your official ERB or SRB or ORB, your last 2 APFTs. It's a big deal, and I'll explain to you in a minute how it affects us in NCOES. Your last 2 DA 5500 and 5501s, that's your tape test, and you'll have access to these slides, sir. I can send them to you as well. And then letters of recommendation from your state PAO or commander. If it's your tag, that's awesome. And why do I need that? The state, if their leadership is saying this person is the one I want, it's hard for APAC to say no. So I'm asking you guys to give me that ammunition to help me fight, because it's my job. Fight and translate guardisms to the active component who really don't think about us. When it comes to doctrine, Air Force is in the same boat. I deal with their folks too. I deal with Senior Master Sergeant Luby, so we vent frequently. It's all, the more ammunition, the better for me to fight for you guys, because that's really my job. All right. So next slide. So that's the process. Submit it to me. I QC it. I send it to APAC, and then once I get it, I send it back to you. Again, same rules apply. Anywhere between 48 hours and 3 months is when I get the pack. There's like 12 people in there. Like uniform. APAC is not a battalion size element like everybody thinks. They're just ARs, FMs, you name it. Next slide. Again, it's the same process. Next slide. I have to break it down for pretty much separate stuff, but it's all the same. Next. These are my restrictions. So for reclassing, don't send me packets or requests, hey, I got this E7 I want to put and send them through skill level 1. It's not going to happen. That's our hard line. That's their hard line. They will not approve E7s or E9s to go through a skill level 1 MOS course. Not going to happen. So their solution to that is if you have E7s, E8s, and E9s that are, say, going to first sergeants or sergeant's major's position, and Sergeant Bellman is one of the examples, we can get them through PAQC 9 times out of 10. And some things are changing with that course too, so we're lucky that they're aligning core competencies with senior NCOs and junior to mid-level officers. So we're going to have a lot more free access to those courses than we used to. GT scores I can usually get through about 2, difference of 2, but why should we? Send your soldiers back for the ASVAB. It'll do them a world of good in the future. But if you're in a pinch, don't go more than 2 points. Security clearances, is the 600-3 says you have to be eligible for one, but you really, in order for you can fill the position, you really are supposed to have one. So if you've got that high-speed troop you want to get through, get their security clearance stuff taken care of now, and then put them in. Height, weight, APFT. I want to touch on NCOES real quick. We had 3 ALC students sent back last week, 2 days prior to graduation, because they failed their second round APFT. They were not ready to go to school. They should never been sent to school. One of them was a walk-on. Guess what we can't do anymore? No more walk-ons. That kills us. And I have a good relationship with their first sergeant. And he's like, Sergeant Wheeler, I can't do it. It's not in our policy. We're doing it as a favor. So I might be able to work it down in the future, but I'm going to have to almost guarantee my firstborn, which, by the way, she annoys me right now, so I might give her up, to get us to be able to prove that. But I'm going to need that high-speed troop. If they're going to be a walk-on, they've got to be able to pass their PT test. And the complaints of they grade too hard, there's one Army standard. I've seen them do their PT tests. It's one Army standard, they grade to standard. Be ready. So when you guys are grading your folks, have someone else do it. Have an MFT do it. If you don't feel it's you want to remove yourself from that, have an MFT. I mean, you can't go wrong on the MFTs do it, but they have to be able to pass those PT tests. And a 1 or 2 push-up margin or a 1% body fat margin ain't going to do it. Give yourself buffers. Okay? And then the medical codes. And another thing, the APFT stuff. I've actually had people ask me to waive the APFT requirements. We can't do that. It's a trade doc requirement. Trade doc's got to do that. So that ain't going to happen either. Medical, MedCom requirement. So same deal. Next slide. Same process. Complete the packet, send it to me, I QC it. If I have any questions, I'll ask, and then I'll send it forward. Next. And then for resources, next slide. These are just the stuff that we've got between the Army Guard. I've set up a few Facebook groups. A few of you may be members of, just where I put a lot of information out. You'll have access to this slide deck. Sergeant Burns has it, and I highly recommend you guys get on these groups and join, because I do put a lot of information through social media that I can't necessarily put out through email. It is restricted to, no PII obviously and stuff like that, but it is a really a lot quicker method of getting stuff out. And I've also created one for the enlisted Army and Air. So I don't know if that's up there, but I can get that information to you guys because I want to get you guys more together. Because not every state talk, Army and Air talk to each other. There's a lot of states out there that couldn't tell you the name of an air wing, and the air wing can't tell you what an Army unit is because they all kind of stay to themselves for the most part, and they don't talk. So I want that crossed off because it's the reserve component. We need to fight this together because we don't. Everybody knows the deal. The elephant in the room. Active side does not give us the credit we deserve, and they don't pay us too much mind unless they need us. So when it comes to doctrine, when it comes to training and things like that, if you fight it as a louder voice, a larger group, you're going to have more impact than you will if you do it alone. Next slide. That's it. Questions? 2 minutes for questions. Perfect. No questions? Did I cover that? Yes, sir.
I was just on the page about the Chief of Public Affairs Facebook page, and there's a forum coming up soon.
That's next week. It's during our PATW.
Okay.
So originally I was told we weren't invited. And then it was like, no, you guys are having your conference at the same time, but we set up our conference first.
Right.
As far as I know. So we went to it last year. They were going to give out the top awards. So Captain Demora, who won the Rising Star, she's eligible to go. I don't know if you guys are going to send her or not.
She's in Dominican Republic, so.
Oh, yeah, so she's not going. Or you can send a representative to take it on, receive on her behalf. But we did pretty well overall in the awards process. We took 3 top level awards. It's still waiting on the DMAs to come out. Air Force, I don't know what happened, but I know they didn't. Last year they announced the top 3 for each one, and then they only did that for the top categories this year. So I'm trying to get more information to see if they awarded top 3, so that we have any second and third places out there. Because I suspect we do. They just didn't announce it.
That's in where
That's going to be in Arlington. The PAL, they call it PALDIF. I don't know what it stands for. Public Affairs Leadership Development or something. It'll be in Arlington. At the Mark Center, which is just an offshoot of the Pentagon. It's like an overflow spot for the Pentagon.
That's literally next weekend, or this weekend.
This coming week, yeah. Starting tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
You're not going to. Sorry, but not. Okay. Good? Yep. Thanks, man.
Cool.
Give him a round of applause.